Hello there. My name is Tiernan, and today I'm talking about the kind of books that I wish I saw way more of. I wish this list were way longer. And that is books that deal with post-grad, those early 20s or even late 20s, just the 20s, as they relate to freaking out about your life and uncertainty. This is a much gentler way also of saying new adult. That's a very touchy term, even though I have strong feelings about it and how we are ready for it. I firmly believe it is time for there to be a new adult shelf, marketing-wise, at the big box bookstores at Barnes & Noble. It's been about a decade since the true explosion of YA. Those readers who were actually in high school or even middle school during that time, like myself, are now in their 20s and are ready for those books and those stories. It's just such a dead spot. And you do see YA skewing older sometimes. You see adults skewing younger. So with that being said, I wanted to make a video about some of my favorite new adult books that deal with the post-grad uncertainty, freaking out about college life. I also snuck in a couple where they are college students, but same vibe. And at this point, one of the first books that comes to mind for this is Hank Green's Duology of An Absolutely Remarkable Thing and a Beautifully Foolish Endeavor. One of my favorite series ever. It's an adult sci-fi, and so it becomes much less about the 20s, but I would argue that it is pretty millennial culture, this book, and I'm saying that as not really a millennial. When we meet the protagonist April May at the beginning of the first book, she's definitely experiencing this crisis of being 23 and having a real job and living in New York City and having friends, dealing with sort of a rocky romantic life, and then the sci-fi element comes along and sort of becomes the story. But the story as it is would not have happened without her being in that early 20 age period. It's one of those times in your life where anything could happen. You're in a very impressionable state where someone could take your life, shake your shoulders, and sort of like move you in any direction. And that is pretty essential to a lot of what happens to April throughout. I love these books so much, so I had to mention them. The rest of these are really like contemporary. The next book I want to tell you about is Luster by Raven Leilani. This is a pretty recent read for me, and this one skews way more adult literary fiction, but still definitely deals with like having no money and having an affair with an older man and having an entry-level job, living in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and sharing an apartment. This is definitely not like older YA. Like, this is one of those that crosses the line over into true adult literary, which I love, but I know this book is not for everyone. Some people have struggled with the plotting, the writing style, but to read kind of a deep dive, put it all out there book, like you kind of just need one of those every now and then. I found this to be so stunning. It captures, you know, the experience of a young Black woman living in New York in her early 20s. Sort of on a similar note, but on the other side of that like YA spectrum that I'm imagining and hoping that you are too, is Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. And it's funny because I think the protagonist in Honey Girl would be older than the protagonist in Luster, but this one reads way more like a YA book that is just like skewing way older, because Grace, the main character in this book, also ends up going to New York, but she's like 27, 28 and just graduated with her PhD. It's this like freak out of identity in a whole different way, because she's just put all of this time and money and energy into something that she's not even sure she wants, which is something that happens to so many people and we just don't talk about it. So reading that in this book is such a breath of fresh air. And another thing I'm observing about these books as I hold them is that they're all kind of not that long. Like, it's just a cold shower of an experience, and I love that about these books. The next book I'm thinking of is A Star is Bored by Byron Lane. I read this last year, and I don't necessarily remember how old the main character is supposed to be, but you kind of assume he's like 26. So he's like living in LA, trying to make it work at a job that he really hates, and gets the opportunity to be the personal assistant to a huge movie star. This is written by the former assistant to Carrie Fisher, so it's very that. There's a Debbie Reynolds character. It's a lot, this book. If you're even slightly obsessed with Carrie Fisher, this book is so worth the read, and it's also gorgeously written. So beautiful. This is one that's kind of like very full of heart and tackles what it's like to have a job, especially a job as an assistant, and the politics of like you with other assistants, moving on into that adult realm of who are your peers, who has power over who, and just so many touching moments, and watching this character come into himself as he is working this crazy job of assisting Carrie Fisher. I just adored this book so much. I would read this like on the beach again. Now this is a book that is not like college post-grad, not even 20s, but in that uncertain realm of life at 18 years old, living, you know, a very different kind of life path than all of these other characters I've mentioned, and that is Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. This book blew me away last year, and it follows this 18-year-old who is working as a pizza delivery girl. She is pregnant. Her father has recently passed away. There's a line in here that just completely did it for me, where she talks about how she longs for that normalcy, that dullness of life that everyone else complains about. There's something to be said for the 9 to 5, the dread of the early 20s when she's dreading something sort of much bigger and much more high stakes, and her life is just not what she thought it might be. This one is actually less than 200 pages, and it's really good, and even though the character is 18, it does not read like YA at all. There's a reason it's not shelved with YA. It's intense. If that sounds good to you, you'll probably love this book. And this final book that also comes out later this year, again, okay, not quite post-grad, but definitely like college, struggling, early 20s life. I think you already know. It's One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Oh, I love this book so much. I'm still deciding if I like it more than Red, White, and Royal Blue. I still don't know. I've thought that I decided, and then I decided the other one. We need not compare. One Last Stop is a New York City, I'm seeing a New York City theme. Queer, lesbian, bisexual, love story. I feel like all the words I would use to describe this book are just like building the vibe. So like subway, pancakes, chosen family, shitty apartment that you love, cute diners, drag shows. If you're not sold on this, then why did you watch this entire video? I love One Last Stop so much. It's probably going to be my favorite book of 2021, even though I read it in 2020 as an ARC, which I feel so grateful for. I'll listen to the audiobook when that comes out for sure. So much love for that and all of these books, really. I'd love to hear your recommendations in the comments. I know there are many more, and I hope that there are many, many, many more in the near future. I would very much like to contribute to that. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Tiernan. Links to everything are in the description. Goodreads, Twitter, Instagram. Have a good one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.